Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. I'm joined by Christian Wentz and Justin Roth, and who have come on my show and discussed things in the past. And today we are going to discuss artificial intelligence, aka AI. We are going to talk about what it actually does, how it works, how it will impact the music industry. And then towards the end of the video, if you are interested, you want to get past the music portion of it, definitely we're going to talk about how it is going to impact a lot of things in society and what it does. So I really thank you guys for coming on, and it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a really fun discussion. So, Christian, I'm going to start with you because you probably know more about, I know you know more about this thing than I do. You know, I'm not very knowledgeable in comparison to you because you are a network systems analyst. You have a billion certifications. You've done everything from government contract work to everything you can imagine. And you're also a musician, which is also great because you can bring you can kind of talk about how AI will come into the music industry and what impact it might have. And so tell everybody, I'll tell everybody what you do for a living and how you use AI in your job. And then, Justin and I'll kind of talk a little bit about it before we get into how it works.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I actually own a MSSP, or a managed security services provider. And my firm provides cybersecurity services, network engineering, fundamental and foundational infrastructure to businesses for their technology use. I'm also a certified AI technologist. I have a master's degree in cybersecurity. Yes, I have a billion certifications, and this is what I do every day. And so essentially, we build secure systems for small, medium-sized business. Large business, I stopped doing a while ago. I much prefer working with other fellow small business owners. They deserve the same level of protection for their businesses and their investments as any of the big enterprises do. So about 20 years ago, we shifted our focus to working with, a small business can be up to 500 employees. We have some that are, have offices in different countries. But primarily what we do is keep their systems secure, and we also ensure that they are compliant with the rules, regulations, and laws that pertain to whatever business they're in. For example, if they're doctors' offices, and we do have several of doctors' offices for clients, that they comply with HIPAA regulations. If they are defense contractors, Department of Defense subcontractors, for example, we provide them with the necessary policy, procedure, and documentation to meet the government requirements. Mm-hmm. So, and that's kind of a broad overview of what it is I do. By the way, thanks for having me on again, dude. This is always fun. It's always good conversation. I appreciate it. Yeah,
we had a really good discussion that was well received last time. So I will tell people that I do use AI, not extensively. I will use ChatGPT to make funny photos. I will ask ChatGPT to, look for factual information because it will list the sources below each thing that I do look up, and I can actually go read those articles. And then for photography use, I don't use it to create images, as far as I don't really, use it to fabricate stuff or make people look like, look like something that they aren't. What I use it for is one of the things AI does for me is I do a lot of restoration of, slides, old film negatives, things like that. So, for example, and this just happens to be sitting next to me, one of my old cameras, if you look at it, it's an old film camera, and that's what I use as a medium, when I do my photography work. So what it does for me is I could set up a template of, say, what a film type like, say, Kodak Portra 400 has its own look. I can actually go in there and program that, and then in every single, let's say I scan a negative of, from a photo I took or from photos other people took years ago, I have that template of how that should look, and it knows exactly what colors need to be corrected because scanning technology is not perfect at this point. Even if you use a drum scanner, if anyone knows what I'm talking about there, and or a flatbed scanner, that's what I use it for. I'll also use it to, you're always going to have a weird imperfection with any kind of photo. Let's say, for example, I get a weird reflection that I don't like that maybe I didn't see coming. I will use it to eliminate that. It actually eliminates the steps I need to take to get rid of that. What I don't do is I don't do like AI artwork. I don't do stuff like that. But it does speed up the process of me doing some of my photo work, things like that. In like spot removal, I get a lot of negatives, film negatives that'll have the negatives can degrade depending on how they are stored. And there'll be weird spots sometimes on photos. Mm-hmm. It actually helps eliminate that. Instead of me going to each individual spot, if I go into Adobe Lightroom or I go into Photoshop, it can eliminate that. Let's say part of the sky. So I had these old photos of my uncle that my uncle took when he was on the USS Ranger, an aircraft carrier in the early 70s. The sky got kind of jacked up a little bit on some of these slides were kind of faded out, like half of it faded out. Well, Generative Expand will help correct that. And actually what's cool is when I do Generative Expand in Photoshop, it will actually take the look of the actual film look of the sky in that slide and actually generate and make it look real, for what I need to do. So when I use it, I don't use it all the time, but I like to use it to look stuff up. And I've actually gone and fact checked AI to make sure that it wasn't full of crap, so
you always should.
Yeah. And I do, because of obviously the potential of somebody programming it to misinform me. So, but it does list sources in ChatGPT. I can make funny memes and stuff like that. And that's the extent of what I use it for. So, and for those that don't know, I've been photographing classic cars for a very, very long time, aside from doing this show. And I've had cars on the covers of magazines and centerfold photos, and I've written articles, et cetera, et cetera. So, and Justin, you're next.
All right. So I basically don't use it, but you did just bring up an interesting point. I guess I've been using like an early version of what would become generative fill, like content aware fill in Photoshop has been around for, I don't even know now. It seems forever, probably like 7 or 8 years, maybe longer. That's about the extent of what I do. If I have to take a tree out of and it's never even perfect. Like normally you got to go in and touch it up. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of one of those cavemen dudes, like with what I do for a living. I'm a graphic designer. I work in advertising. I do design work for like Obituary and a handful of other bands. I'm a musician. I own a screen printing business. So, I've got my hands on a lot of things, most of them creative. And it's kind of been my stance, and this is what we're going to talk about today. I don't like AI. I don't like that it's creeping into some of the areas in which, I make my money. So it's kind of I guess I don't want to feed into it. I don't feel that I should use it. I feel like it's kind of hypocritical for me as an artist to use it. So yeah, I mean, I've played with it. And I've used a lot of the beta testing tools. Like Adobe has their own version, which I don't even know how I feel about that. It's like you make your living selling software to creatives, and then you also create the thing that's going to put those creatives out of work at some point.
Yep, Photoshop beta. I'm definitely familiar with it.
Or I think they call theirs like Firefly or Firefox or something. Yeah, I think it's Firefly.
It's Firefly. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I've played with it to see what its capabilities are, and it's kind of a mixed bag because like sometimes you could prompt it to make something and it'll spit out something unbelievable in like 3 seconds. And sometimes you'll prompt it to do the simplest thing of all times and you have like a woman with 7 fingers and an arm growing out of her forehead. So, I mean, I don't know. I like to keep my eye on how good it's getting so that I know what's coming. I've played with some of the like AI website builders, because I do build websites and manage some websites. And yeah, some of it's pretty good. Some of it's pretty smart, but I don't use ChatGPT. Like I actually paid attention in school. I can actually write a sentence. I understand punctuation. So yeah, I don't know. To me, I'm kind of a caveman. So we'll move on.
Okay.
Well, if you don't, Tony, you want to add, because I want to
No.
address some of the things he said,
Yeah, go ahead.
I completely understand it, especially from I think the very first people that were most affected directly are graphic designers. When AI became cheap and widely available, they were the really kind of the ones that we saw having them being affected the most immediately and the most dramatically. However, I can tell you this: I know how much, and I know and respect how much work you put into what it is that you do. I employ a full-time, well, right now he's part-time, full-time graphic artist to design work for our website, our logos, our marketing pieces, and I've worked with him for about, I don't know, 15 years. Over the last few years, well, let me rewind, and I'm sure this is also part of your process is like if you have a client that really doesn't know how to express to you what it is that they want, you have to kind of draw it out of them. You learn the language that they speak so that you can find a good way of saying, okay, and then you go to work putting together some things for proof, and give them some choices. That when you do it organically, can take a great deal of time. Sometimes, and I don't know about you, but with Scott, he wasn't charging people for that time. And I always encourage him, just charge me for that time, man. You're doing the work, right? So he has found that using AI to translate what I want into what it is that he understands and vice versa takes him a heck of a lot less time. He can take what it is he thinks I need, put it into AI and spit out a few ideas. And then I look at him and go, yeah, that's not exactly where I'm at, but I like this. Then he takes his expertise with light and shade and perspective, color palettes and grading and all the other things that you guys are expert at. And then he takes it and turns it into something that doesn't look like AI anymore, with his own efforts. And the great benefit to artists that I see is that he can now do 20 of those in a day, where it used to take him a month to do 20 of those. So he can do literally 10 times the amount of work that he was previously doing with AI as a tool, rather than a crutch or as as the actual AI also has a kind of specific flavor in its output, and we recognize it. It will reach a point where it doesn't so much, but at the same time, I don't know that I could create a prompt that would give me exactly. I am not a visual artist. I'm an audio one, an auditory. So I could not tell you exactly what I would want in an album cover or a logo. I give you a general idea. Make it look metal, dude. I mean, that can mean 5 million different things. So using AI in your particular space could really help you actually get more work done for the same amount of money. In other words, you're making money for each one, but you can do 10 in a day instead of 2. So there is a great deal of benefit for it in that. And that's what the guy who works for me, Scott. Scott does a lot of work, and it doesn't take him nearly as much time. And he's making the same money he made before doing more work in less time. So now he can actually service more clients. So that's really, it's kind of like this is what computers did for businesses. In the 1950s and 60s, they were way too expensive, and a lot of people didn't trust them, and they made too many mistakes, and on and on and on. Now, can you imagine actually doing anything that we do without them? And they have not, I mean, sure, they replaced people that used abacuses and slide rules at the time, but they also created entirely new industries for people that we needed in order to support computers as a primary method of running businesses or government or whatever. And I see that in particular with what you do specifically, that it could be a really great, it could be an absolutely great way to expand your business without working 10 times as hard. So, and that's what I find in my own business that it does. Here's a good example. If I am putting together a new network that has multiple firewalls that connect multiple networks and subnetworks, that could take me a long time to program them. Programming them generally, I've gotten pretty fluent with being able to sit down and type it out. I know how to speak firewall, so I'll write the configuration files. That could take me days. now if I tell ChatGPT, for example, what firewall it is, what model, the make, what it is that I'm trying to accomplish very specifically. This is the other thing. Not anybody can do it. You have to know the architecture that you're after and how to make everything connect. It can spit out a configuration file for me in just a minute. So I can do an entire, if I'm setting up 15 firewalls, I can do all of those in a matter of an hour rather than days of trial and error and testing. So I don't feel like I'm going to be replaced. I can't imagine that you're going to be replaced unless you dig in and refuse to ride, to take advantage of the new technology for your benefit.
Well,
I hope.
I'm gonna interject and kind of disagree because
Okay.
with what you're talking about. So like I'm a published award-winning logo designer. I've branded some pretty huge companies and people are paying. So with what you're doing, so just to put it in perspective, like code, that's fine because like code is code. It makes something work. It makes a window open. It makes a window close. That's fine. Nobody's going to see that. But nobody's paying me personally or paying my rate or hiring me as a professional, looking at my body of work, my portfolio. They're not hiring me to give them AI. Like they're hiring me to give them me. So, when you talk about like I can spit out ideas fast, that's fine, but they're not my ideas. Like I work fast as is, like I'm an efficient worker, so I don't feel that I need it. But if you hire me to do a logo concept, I normally will give a client like 4 or 5 options. I might spend, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours just sketching. So I'll have my compositions. That's all organic from my brain. Like I cannot explain to ChatGPT or Adobe, whatever. I can't tell that how to think spatially and how to see things the way I see them because it's not inside my head, So I just feel like if I'm selling somebody AI work, like I would feel 1, very gross about doing that, and 2, like it just wouldn't be the same. Like now I'm going to be refining ideas that are not mine versus creating my own ideas.
That's not what I'm suggesting, actually. Scott is not refining AI and giving it to me. That would look weird to me, and I'd be able to smell it. You know what I mean? It's just like is this the basic shape? Is this the basic background? And then he takes it from there. But for what
I don't know Scott, but like I can make that so fast that I just don't see a reason to cheat it. Like I don't know.
Well, then to your point also about your body of work, people come to you and say, "I like what you've done," because you have a flavor, you got a way to do it. It's a signature. I would actually take my entire body of work, have GPT scan it all in so that it knows how I work. And then it would be able to say, well, this is kind of the way you have always done these things. So now I can give you a basis for a place to start. And I understand. Look, dude, I'm not trying to sell it to you. Not at all. Not at all. If you don't want to use it, dude, cool. Yeah. I totally respect your artistic integrity without question. What I'm saying is that this is the direction that the world is moving. Yeah. You might find it more challenging, but at the same time, like I said, I can smell an AI picture or AI music a mile away, and I'm like, to me, it's lazy. It's really, and it's also, it speaks to it speaks to the lack of skill and commitment to art. If somebody just tries to pass AI off as their work, I'm not a big fan of it unless what they're doing is so incredibly specific to the way AI works. Now, here's a good example of that. I don't know if you've seen. There's a guy who does steampunk AI movies, and they're usually 1 minute to 2 minutes long, and the artwork in them is so incredibly distinctively unique. And when I chatted back and forth with him on Facebook, his prompts, the way he creates it, takes a real artist that also understands how to prompt AI. This is not something just anybody could do. I was absolutely mind blown with how he does this. I couldn't even properly describe it to you, frankly. So think of it this way in that case, and that is that we will get new avenues for artwork that looks unique and fresh, and rather than just AI copying something and then giving us kind of an ersatz version of what it is that you were inspired to do. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so again, I can really appreciate where you're at with it, dude. I just hope it doesn't end up costing you. Is where I'm at. I hope it does not end up costing artists all over the world, because it is entirely possible that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, today, like, I designed an album cover for a band today. Did it in about 90 minutes, like start to finish, 90 minutes. I thought it looked pretty sick. They were extremely thrilled with it. But like, part of my process, and I think the reason that a lot of bands choose to work with me, is that I understand music. I get a vibe. Like, I have to listen to the song. I ask for the lyrics. I really I dive into it from a totally different standpoint. I look at it from a compositional standpoint. I'm not looking at it strictly as shape and color. Like, I'm looking at it from a feel standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I just truly don't think that yet, anyway. Now we'll revisit this in 5 years and you can, say, told you so, but I just don't think that you cannot recreate that process yet.
Yeah.
I disagree with that too. Let me just jump in here. I'd say let's revisit this in 5 months, because
sure.
AI is actually creating art without being prompted now.
Yeah.
You simply set it up to say what your job is, what you do every day is create different kinds of art, and it just does. Yeah. It does sunsets, and it does portraits, and it does cartoons, and it does anything out, and it's all very singularly unique. And we've actually had that for a number of years, but now it's gotten way faster and way cheaper. So,
yeah. Well, let me say, before we close this first part of this off,
okay.
What Justin is probably referring to, I'll give you an example of what AI can't do. So, and actually, if you look at a past interview on my podcast, Nick Van Dyke actually brought this up, because we talked about this. What AI cannot do, and Justin's talking about, the feel of stuff. Give you an example. So they had an AI version of Al Michaels announcing the Olympics, and you could have his voice. You could program it to say stuff as something's happening in a game. But what you cannot do, at least not yet, is you can't replicate the feel of, say, in the 1980 Olympics when the U.S. beat the Soviets, when he screams, "Do you believe in miracles?" You can't really replicate that feeling. It's kind of a spur of the moment thing. And I think that's probably what he's more referring to.
I love Nick. He's a dear friend. I love the guy to death, and I think he's totally wrong.
Well, I'm just saying right now, I mean, the feeling that
right now
it's referring to is what I'm talking about. For me personally, again, and I agree with Justin in the fact that when he's talking about it's not coming from me. Like, when I look through a camera and I take a photo, that's my vision coming through that camera. But I just use it to speed up the process to do certain things in it, especially when it comes to like photo restoration. It just helps me get through. It takes like 10 or 15 steps away for me, and that's really primarily what I use it for. And actually, a lot of those photos obviously are already taken. So all I have to do is restore them using that. And, that's kind of what I've used it for. So, but I get it.
And that's a tool. Rather than a crutch. That's not doing your work for you. You know what it is that you need from it, right? So, and it just saves you a lot of time trying to do the same thing. What AI is best at overall, this is what AI does best, is that it is able to process, understand, and map out massive amounts of data in ways that humans can't. And that's really its best and most useful and highest function, is in the organization, delineation of data for human consumption. Because we can't possibly see it the way AI can see it.
Right.
So that being the case, it will. One of its greatest uses is in photography, where you scan it in and AI can improve it with the color or the sharpness. Like you said, it'll add if the sky looks kind of weird, it'll correct it so it looks like a sky rather than some piece of slate or whatever. So that. All things being said, as far as this goes, its best use is in collating and understanding massive amounts of information and then giving us access to it.
Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command Podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like what you see and hear on the show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified when we have a new video, and if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.